A lot of news happening in the world of gaming this week, for sure. The thing I found the most interesting is the fact that E3 is canceled. Yeah, E3 2022, which was intended to be an in-person event, a good old-fashioned E3 game reveal announcement fest for a weekend, is totally canceled, announced by the ESA, the organization that usually puts it on. It went out as an email blast, apparently, to all people involved in E3 or people who attended E3 or journalists. I didn't get the email of this announcement. What happened? I guess they forgot about me. Doesn't matter now. E3 is dead, and it is not like an April Fool's thing. I know a lot of people are probably going to be thinking that as the news is breaking on Thursday, rolling into Friday, April Fool's Day. Kind of funny enough, but insider people have seen this coming. This totally makes sense. So if you don't remember, E3 has kind of been fraught for a while, thanks to COVID and all that stuff. So 2019 was the last in-person E3. That was the last one I went to. 2020, there was nothing. That was the dark times. 2021, there was a digital showcase, and it was awkward and not great, to say the least. Since then, the void has been filled by other companies putting on their own digital showcases. Nintendo has continued their Nintendo Directs, PlayStation does their own thing, Xbox does their own things. A lot of the media outlets will hold their own thing. GameSpot does a thing, IGN does a thing. Publishers do their own thing. Jeff Keighley does the Summer Game Fest and all those things. All these other things have happened to kind of fill the void. And it makes sense. It was kind of a natural progression. And I've talked about E3 a lot, I feel like. But this time it feels like it's really real, where the ESA did say, like, hey, we're going to double down and make 2023 the best event yet. We'll see about that, guys. I do feel personally like E3 doesn't make as much sense anymore. Granted, E3 was a fun time where it was all consolidated. It started as a thing you read about in magazines. I did growing up. Then it started to be something that you would watch on TV on G4, and it seemed super cool. Then it became more of an internet thing. And with it becoming an internet thing, and with COVID kind of shutting down some of the in-person stuff, I see the digital future continuing, and I think E3 is going to have a hard time kind of trying to muscle their way in there. Granted, E3 is really just a whole big slideshow of advertisements. And I think now, with the publishers and certain places being able to put out their own little mini E3s, it's going to be messy and scattered and all over the place, and that's not as fun, and it's just going to really be a bunch of advertisements. At least with E3, at a show floor, at a real trade show, you were able to have journalists, people, YouTubers, whatever, going to be able to actually play these games and get their hands on them, ask questions, get some information, all that type of stuff. Now that seems like it's going away. A lot of people think that's a loss, and in the past, I kind of would too. I love going to E3. It was kind of like the goal for me as someone trying to do this for a job. My first E3 was 2014, and it felt like it was like, holy shit, I finally got here. I somehow scammed my way into this, and I've been going ever since. So it is sad to see it go. But from a coverage perspective, as a person who covers things, just doing it here now, like how I do it, arm sharing, makes sense. I mean, look at it, even the way it goes, even when like we do get to go and see the games and talk to the developers and actually like get test versions of the games, get our hands on it, like we still get the wool pulled over our eyes sometimes, like the Cyberpunk debacle. I saw Cyberpunk years ago, thought it looked great, then that whole thing happened. Then you have the opposite, right? Where Elden Ring released, just a ton of online hype. The reveal at the Game Awards, the random little trailers and tests during the year, no real traditional like event and press coverage, so to speak, like traditionally, at least not a lot, not widespread. And just through online conversation and anticipation, the game was still able to prosper. So really, you have the companies being able to do their own reach just through the internet, and however they want, they can have some control of it. And they're probably all looking like, why pay the ESA, this organization, this really technically lobbying organization, why pay them so much to set up a big elaborate booth at E3 that only journalists and a couple of select few people of the public can see, when we could just do our own thing, just put out our own trailer online and capture a bunch of eyeballs. All you gotta do is just be good at social media. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that, but the big question is, well, what's next? If not E3, then what? And I think the big thing that's going to fill the void is the Jeff Keighley and company Summer Game Fest. He has very much publicly talked about positioning that to kind of be the answer to E3. And I think they've done a decent job. Now, say what you want about Jeff Keighley. The game awards that he puts on, for me, kind of go up and down in terms of like how much it just feels like a hacky ad and how much of the game reveals and stuff like that. I generally still am positive of it because I still think that it's good to get it out there. It's good to get more people's eyeballs on games that they wouldn't otherwise, even if some of the ads in there are so bad. But some of the other events that he puts on, like Gamescom Opening Night Live and the Summer Game Fest we've seen in the past, and like some of the stuff he co-did with the reveals for the consoles and stuff, I think at least do a generally good job of being a curated presentation of trailers, reveals, and interviews. And that's what E3 has always been. That's necessarily kind of what it was like when you were watching it on G4. So if that can just become bigger and become its own thing, independent of E3, independent of the ESA, and by being less dependent on the ESA, it's actually even further detached from publisher interests other than them just actually just showing their games on this thing, I think that's a good thing. And if you see myself and some other people like looking back at E3 or really the ESA, the organization behind it, and thinking or talking negatively about it, it's because they've had missteps in the past. They make decisions that just sometimes don't really make sense. And there's just a lot of backroom stuff that never really sounded great. So that also kind of leads me to believe that like E3 isn't dead yet, in the sense that I think it will return in 2023. I think it's going to continue to kind of shamble on for a couple of years, and they're going to want to keep it going because E3 as a brand is something. It's powerful. They're going to want to keep that on life support. They're going to want to keep that going. So it's either going to slowly die on the vine, or it's going to make a good big comeback, which people will probably be nostalgic for at a point. And I would root for that if there was different leadership, and different leadership behind it would be what it would take for E3 to essentially be restored to its former glory. Again, I'm talking a lot about something that really is a presentation of advertisements. I know I can get on the cynical side of that, but I did always like to, look forward coming home from school or trying to scam off a day at work just to run home and watch like the G4, like E3 presentations of Microsoft and Sony back to back. Like it was just cool and exciting to look forward to. But that's where it's at. So for right now, for me, E3 is like a to be continued, but like to be continued. I have a lot of memories with all the years I've gone to E3. I would love to talk about those more at some point from various angles. Wild times for sure. Saw some really cool games, met some people, some colleagues, mentors. Very thankful for it, but that's where I'm at. That's how I'm feeling. That's my take on it. I like this stuff. I like going to events. I'm not going to PAX East this year. That's usually my favorite event. I'm definitely going to be going next year. Video game events are just like the best thing ever. They feel like it's kind of just like a good, fresh reminder of why we love this stuff. It's just a celebration. So one less is still a bummer, but I love talking about this stuff. And if you like what I'm trying to do here, just yap about stuff I love, gaming news, games, movies I find interesting. All you gotta do is click the like button and maybe subscribe, because I put out a video like once or twice a week. I'm not gonna spam you or anything like that, but thank you for coming around here. I'm Jake Baldino. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me.